This conference will now be recorded.
Good evening, and welcome to Bind and Bound Book Media Studio, where we talk about different topics. We discuss books, we discuss videos, and our topics mainly thus far with this group have been about quantum physics, metaphysics, spirituality, and we invite you to watch. And again, feel free to contact us if you would like to join the group at some point. Tonight, I have with me Ray Rivera and Terry Lucas. They are both off camera, and that is by choice. It's not that I excluded them. And I'm Darren, and I will be your host for this discussion. Tonight, we're going to talk about Neville Goddard's book, The Power of Awareness. Again, Neville Goddard book, Power of Awareness. You can find it on YouTube, uh, or you can actually purchase it on Amazon. All right. Good evening, Terry and Ray. How are you guys doing?
Good, thank you.
Yes.
Good. Okay. Now, I'm going to assume that both of you at least read the book, started reading the book,
Mm-hmm.
and are ready to talk about it.
Yes.
Correct?
Sure thing.
Okay. So, have either of you, actually, let me ask this question. Both of you are familiar with Neville Goddard, right?
No.
Yes.
No? Yeah.
No, this is my introduction to.
Okay. Yeah, for some reason, I thought we covered something of his before. Hmm? Uh, and you, Ray?
Yeah, I think it was something I came across earlier, from our earlier sessions. I think we might have circulated some of his work,
Okay.
in our
Mm,
in our chats.
mm. So, yeah, Neville Goddard, I, yeah, I think he passed away back in the 70s. You know, he's actually from a previous generation, but a very influential speaker and writer on, I'm going to say, metaphysical, esoteric type topics. You know, his big thing was imagination and consciousness. And power awareness was basically focused on, I think more on consciousness with some focus on imagination. I believe he has a book called Power of Imagination as well. Uh, in this book, there were 27 chapters. That sound about right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, how do we want to approach this? We want to go through just maybe chapter by chapter, mm, um, or you want to jump from like topic, you know, what jumped out at you, or what do you guys feel comfortable with?
I think jumping around
Um.
the different topics
Okay.
should be cool.
Uh, Terry, you okay with that? Or
Yes. Yes. I'm okay with that.
okay. Uh, well, I'm gonna just kind of start with going from my notes and highlighted parts. You know, his first chapter was I am.
Mhm.
Uh, what are your thoughts on the whole concept of the two words I am?
We've been discussing the I am for a while now. Um. And I find that even in my vocabulary now, just in general, my general conversation, I'm mindful of the I am in which I speak and how powerful it is. Um.
Good.
It.
Oh, go ahead, Terry.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, I just find that so this chapter it only just put more emphasis, I would say, on what I already know. that that's how this chapter was for me.
Yeah. Ray, any thoughts?
Yeah. Like Terry, like Terry, I've been finding myself sort of almost correcting the way I'm thinking and adjusting it to sort of implement the concept of I am just on a regular basis. So I think more now than ever after, our previous conversations and finishing this latest book by Neville, I think I'm taking it more personally, I would say.
Okay.
I'm looking to implement it. I believe in it a lot more. The growth and an understanding of the subject of the concept of I am, listening to his stories, listening to the examples he's given, and then connecting it to things that I wasn't even aware of might have been just me implementing it subconsciously or just, doing it without understanding how it worked. It's all coming together and making me feel more confident when I sit around trying to figure things out and restructuring my thought process with I am as like the starting point, you know? And yeah, so, reading, getting through the first chapter and hearing him reiterate the idea of I am just made me more confident that I was actually on the right path.
Yeah. I, you know, what, I read, and you guys probably heard me say this in one of the sessions, but that I am are the two word, yeah, I am are the two most powerful words in any language. And I think it's good that, when both of you say you're more aware of when you use those words, how to use them, at least to your advantage, because what comes after the words I am has an impact. And as we've been talking more about consciousness, the I am, I think, is connected to that
Hmm.
because the words I am, to my understanding, have really come from scripture, from uh, the words I am that I am, and basically it is kind of signifying the divinity within you. And Neville Goddard is a big believer that God is within us, and we're just a manifestation of the Creator. So when we say I am, it's really touching into our innate power.
Hmm.
So I think probably just growing up, we all use the word I am, not really thinking about, I guess, the power in it. And I was just saying the other night in the on the Power Now group about when we were taught as kids as punishment, you know, and you had to write on the board or on paper 100 times,
Hmm.
I am something, uh,
I will not.
yeah, I will
It
not,
was, you know.
So all that is part of when you say it is actually, I think, doing something really powerful to you on a subconscious level. So uh, I thought it was good that he opened with that.
Mhm.
And I mean, do either you guys feel that it really does make a statement to your
Hmm.
subconscious mind?
Yeah. For me, I think it really instills this sort of accountability. So when you say I am, it's like you're sort of embracing that responsibility that whatever it is you're looking to do, initializing it with I am is reaffirming that you are responsible for whatever it is you're looking to get done. And
Yes.
I guess that kind of ties to your example with writing on the wall, writing on the board as a kid. It's like, I will not do this is a sort of reaffirming. this is your responsibility not to do this. Well, now it's the reverse. I am going to do something, and I will, in this positive note, do something, is reaffirming and giving you that sort of responsibility and accountability, consciously and subconsciously.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think when you say something like, uh, we talked about, affirmations and things like that, and why it's always start out with I am followed by something in the present tense.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that's part of the subconscious, but I think it's also, I want to say, a metaphysical kind of perspective, which is everything happens in the now. So when you say I am, as opposed to I will, you're defining that whatever it is true now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the book, in the first chapter, and this is something that's often referred to, and comes from scripture. It says that let the weak man say, "I am strong,"
Mm-hmm.
and you think about that. That's reprogramming the state of being. I think reprogramming the subconscious mind so that it's not what's real. You're changing, I think, that reality. So yeah, you may be weak, but don't say you're weak. Say I am strong, because that then I believe kind of creates a new reality for you.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Terry.
No, I was agreeing with you.
Okay,
I was agreeing.
okay. Uh, because he also states um, it defines the concept of yourself. So when you say, yeah, I am strong, and you kind of think about a child, a child who hasn't kind of embedded negative thoughts yet or beliefs with their imagination, like they could be a superhero, and that's what
Mm-hmm.
they'll say. I am Superman. I am Spider Man.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And in those moments, they fall into character.
Mm-hmm.
And unless somebody tells them that's not true, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
they can come
And
to
just
actually,
the way they say it with confidence, you see that
yes,
Yeah.
difference,
Mhm.
from a child really, yes, stating it as they think it versus someone like even ourselves having to convince ourselves. I guess, that difference between that younger mind and the older mind, based on, yes, experience in life. I think
yes.
that's what makes I am important, and sort of giving us back that ability to sort of state things with confidence.
Mhm.
And I think that's why it's important. Like, so when you're doing your affirmations and you're saying I am, it's all about reprogramming your subconscious mind.
Hmm.
Mhm. Because I absolutely agree with you, Ray. When children do it, they do it with belief. They actually
Hmm.
fall into that character that they want to be.
Hmm.
And like I said, unless some adult comes along and tells them, stop, playing make believe, you know, that's not who
Hmm.
you are. In that moment, that's who they believe themselves to be,
Hmm.
which again goes to the power of our mind.
And I
Um,
think I have one note here that I actually liked from chapter one, and kind of reinstates everything we just said, where he states that everything depends upon its attitude toward itself. Your concept of yourself determines the world in which you live. And I think
mhm.
everything we just spoke about is really just in that one statement from that chapter.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Mhm. Yeah, repeat that again, Ray.
Sure,
Yeah.
it's
Mm,
everything depends upon its attitude toward itself. Your concept of yourself determines the world in which you live.
yes. Mm, that I think again supports or reinforces the way he opened up, which I think the way he opened up, he said, you know what, don't, what was it? Yeah, dismiss the mirror, look at the face, or something that way. We basically said, you know what, look at yourself. Mm,
Hmm.
You know, we focus on the mirror, but it's not the mirror, or really the mirror is really just a reflection of us. But look at your face, and ties into what the sentence you just read, Ray, is yeah, we see the world really as we see ourselves.
Hmm.
Mm. And I really, think it was him starting with the I am was a nice setup because I think in chapter two, he begins talking about consciousness.
Yes.
Hmm.
Uh, let me see what my notes here. You know, I think, well, both of you being at, having been participating, in these discussions, yeah. And, outside of the discussion, there's a certain part of, I think, we'll say the world side, but, the word consciousness is becoming really popular now. You know, um,
Hmm.
you know, and you know, I think they're still having a hard time trying to define it. Yeah, but I think even if we can't define it, I think we all have an idea of what it means. And if you cannot define it, don't feel bad because even we'll say the scholars have a hard time defining it or determining where it is or what it is. But I think we all have an idea, even if we can't articulate it. But he goes into the consciousness, and what I thought was great about it is he says something to the fact of, yeah, you have to have the state, you have to have the consciousness of what you want to become in order to become it. To me, that was pretty deep. It's like if you don't have that consciousness, then you can never become that person. Hmm. Does that sound familiar?
Yes.
Hmm. Uh, what are your guys' thoughts on it? Let's see if I can find the actual line, but uh, I thought this I thought this was good also because when you're talking about manifestation, I think that his concept of consciousness plays right into that.
Hmm. Yeah. One note that I took from this chapter was when he said that what appears to you are products of your own consciousness, right? And then he says, your actions reveal where you live psychologically, which determine your reality, right?
Mm. Hmm.
And so essentially your consciousness, like your mindset, the way you think, the way you're perceiving reality is actually, a creation. Reality is a creation based on how you think, what you're conscious about.
Yes.
That's where I
Yeah.
got my takeaway from that. So essentially, when people tell you to be careful what you think about, essentially, and how you think, because that greatly affects, going back to chapter one, your attitude, which all comes together to create the reality that you're living. And I think I had one example I had spoken to someone about was when you could see two people, side by side, and one person looks miserable, but the other one is smiling, yet they're living in the same environment. And so that's just an indicator of where they are consciously, where one
Mm.
person consciously is having a terrible, reality based on things that may be happening to them or things that they're thinking about, maybe their outlook of the world, right? While the other person has a slightly more positive outlook, and which allows them to hold a smile on their face. So they're living side by side, but they're living in two different realities based on their consciousness.
Yes. Uh, uh, which again supports the belief or the concept, yeah, that our external world is a reflection of our internal world.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we are not conscious of that. And therefore we have a difficult time changing our outer world because we can't make that connection.
Mm-hmm.
And if I may just kind of deviate to something else we talked about in the previous conversation about those four stages of consciousness, you know, and you kind of think about our outer world reflecting our inner world. And in that first state of consciousness, we talk about to me, you know, where we're going through the victim stage, everything's happening to me, and that
Mhm.
just perpetuates our experience because as long as we stay in that world, we're just going to think that everything's happening to me. And I don't know about you guys, but uh, I know I've gone through that phase. I think a lot of people have, where things just aren't going your way, and you're thinking, why is this happening to me? Uh, which just perpetuates, I don't know. Have, have you ever felt that way? Like literally, just felt that everything was happening to you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've had those experiences, and I think I'm I'm trying to transition out of the by me into the as me. I believe as me is the next. No,
I, after
through me,
me is through me.
through me. Yeah, that's. I think I'm teetering there until something else pops up that kind of throws me off, and you go, kind of, where did that come from?
Hmm.
But that to me stage, it's a very victim like I think state.
Oh, it
It's to
definitely
me,
is.
it's a very victim like, and I think at one point in my life I got tired of being the victim, and I was like, okay, enough of this. And it was like, okay, what can I do? Because me repeating certain cycles it was exhausting, and it was like, okay, it felt like kind of like you're just lying on the floor and things are just happening to you. You're like, all right, I gotta get up and do something.
Hmm.
Like, and I that's the by me now. That's the by me stage. You guys are getting up and you starting to do stuff, and even though that's an exhausting phase to be in, you feel a little bit more empowered because now you can see the shift that I can do something to change it. And then
Hmm.
as you go to the, is it through me?
Yeah, you go
The
from
yeah,
by me to through me.
through me. Then it's almost like, oh, it's an easier way to do this.
Hmm.
So your consciousness changes, and as it changes, it's just like that by me and um through me. It I remember him mentioning like the need to you it's the to release the need to control. Not to release control, but the need to control.
Yes.
And I feel like for me that's very hard. No, I take that back. It's not hard because it's it's not hard anymore. It's just remembering you don't have to control everything. Like, so my consciousness is being aware and conscious of you don't need to control everything, or you don't need to control the need to control. You can let it go and just let things flow. That's what I was
Yep. I'm with you there. I know for me, it was, yeah, it's hard trying to go to the next level of consciousness. I think that's what the difficulty is, making that transition. But it's also a relief when you do, because I agree with you. When that, again, I don't want to stay too long on this, but I just think it's important when you're discussing consciousness and the world, your outer world reflecting is really a reflection of your inner world. But when you're in that victim stage, it's exhausting. And I think Neville mentioned it. I think that he mentioned that too. When you get sick and tired, I don't know if that was him or somebody else I heard that, but basically you get tired of being the victim, because that does, it's you find, and this may sound weird, but you find joy in the beginning, you know, because you're mad. Mhm.
saying.
You're upset, you're angry, so you find some joy out of, complaining and moaning about what's happening to you, because think about it. What are you saying? Me, 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 me. Look what's happening to me. I can't believe all this is happening to me. So there is some joy in that pain, as crazy as that sounds. But to your point, Jared said, it does get exhausting. So yeah, while you're sitting there one day, you're like, I got to do something. And once you start moving into that by me, yeah, it does become empowering. But then even the by me can become exhausting too. When you get to the through me, that's what I like to equate to, you're in the flow and things are just coming through you. You're just a vessel. And I think people who have really elevated their consciousness, when they get to that fourth stage, I think most people will say it takes a while to stay in that stage. But again, the point being, with Neville, even though he didn't mention those four stages, I think him focusing on our consciousness uh, basically determines our reality. And I think
Mhm.
that's actually powerful on many ways. When you begin to understand consciousness. Hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Something else he said too, and it ties chapter two back to chapter one, when he's talking about, you could say I am a student, I am a father, I am a doctor. One person could say all those things, and it's not different I ams. And I wish I could remember his exact words, but they're basically different variations of the I am, which are I think just different aspects of consciousness. Yeah, and there is a belief that you know universal consciousness that the first thing that occurred in the evolution of the universe was consciousness, was a sense of awareness, and that we're all just different aspects of that one consciousness. That's where it gets really deep. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
One of the things too, I want to say for those who may watch this discussion later, if you are a person who's familiar with uh, scripture, you may find Neville's book, I'm gonna say encouraging in one area, in that he aligns a lot of his concepts with scripture. But I think what people might not like is the fact of how his belief in terms of what God is. And again, he's a big believer that God is within us and that Jesus is a state of consciousness. Oh,
Mm.
what did you guys think about that?
I believe Jesus was an actual individual, he wasn't just a metaphor, but I believe he understood what Neville is speaking about. And, you know, the documentation of, his teachings, have been sort of reinterpreted over time and kind of lost that message.
Mm-mm.
So, and, that which is why Neville is able to dive into, the Bible and reread these scriptures and adjust the interpretation, to what he believes is how things function, and it makes sense, right? And he has a lot of good examples, and even in his work, he describes how it's typically interpreted versus how it's interpreted, you know, through his concept.
Mm.
So, yeah, so I mean, when listening to his work, and I always like instances where he brings up different scriptures and he gives those two perspectives, what people typically interpret it as versus how he interprets it.
Yeah. I like when he does that because you guys know my approach is, you guys always say, connecting the dots, or
Hmm.
as I say now, connecting the atoms. Where when people move out of that mindset of this one's right and that one's wrong, more into that space of they're really saying the same thing, and which comes to
Hmm.
mind is the video way that you shared the other day, you know,
Hmm.
where the woman, I can't remember her name, but she was taking another aspect of how different groups say the same thing but use different words. So I like how Neville aligns you know his metaphysical with scripture.
Hmm.
Mhm.
uh, and I yeah, now that I think about it, though I've listened to plenty of his audios, I'm not sure if he actually says whether or not he believes in the physical aspect of Jesus Christ. But I
Hmm.
know he does talk about we need to shift from focusing on the physical person and focus more on the consciousness. And he
Hmm.
points out how, that's really what this is about, achieving the Jesus consciousness,
Hmm.
uh, which supposedly Jesus was the only person who had that state of consciousness.
Hmm.
Mm.
No, I agree. I think he does approach it in that manner. Um,
Okay.
and even when I listen and I kind of take it I take his interpretation and then I adjust it sort of in my mind as if, okay, even if he was, if Jesus or any of these figures were, more than just, concepts, right? Does it still apply? Does his concepts still apply? And I think they
Hmm.
do. Like whenever he mentions how Jesus would introduce himself and he would speak about himself using I am,
Hmm.
you know, whether he was real or not, depending on, who you're speaking to, I think it still applies, right?
Yes. Mm.
The concept of I am.
Now, um, I kind of look at it this way: whether he existed or not is a different
Mm-hmm.
conversation than his teachings.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one could you can argue all you want, about whether he was real or not, and I would say, well, but it's his teachings that matter.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Now, the that whole Jesus consciousness, I think that was a huge step for me when I first learned of that a couple of years ago. You know, because that removes it out of the religious construct. And when they say, other people throughout history have had, or achieved that Jesus, consciousness. But Terry, were you going to say something? Did you want to contribute?
No, not yet. No, I was when you were talking about something previously, but
Mm,
it was just like he had mentioned, like he said, thus is abundantly clear that there is only one I am, and you are that I am. And while I am is infinite, you by your concept of yourself are displaying only a limited aspect of the infinite I am. And I was just like, I think we spoke on this before, and I think it's something what you said. It might have been something you said about no, not you, but just saying that we are like the consciousness, like we're all a part of the same consciousness, but just having different experiences as the consciousness.
mm,
I was trying to latch on, but you guys kept talking.
mm. But what you shared is also, I think, a really powerful statement, because that says, when you hear me say, things like, I think we all have a lot more power, capabilities than we are aware of. And I think Neville kind of touched on that we're all part of that infinite consciousness. We may lack the awareness of it,
Mhm.
but that doesn't mean we're not part of it. So again, I forgot the exact words you shared, but that was what I remember them, and that's what I took from that was, yeah, we're part of that infinite consciousness. If we could only develop the awareness, if we could only get our consciousness to that level to line up, because I think that's where, as they say, the magic slash miracles happen. Hmm.
Mhm.
Yep. Uh, like I said, I'm just like, kind of flowing through the book. If either of you have anything and something that you want to jump to, please, you know, throw it out there. Mhm.
No, you saying that's where the magic happened. It was, I think, I know we're jumping, but in free will, it was he was mentioning that knowing that there's nothing you need to do once you have, once you're set on whatever it is you desire, that understanding that there is nothing you need to do. And again, that goes back to the stages of the consciousness from the by me to the through me,
Mm-hmm.
by just letting it basically come to you.
Yes. Mhm. You know, to get to that point, I think about it as when you're there, where you said like you don't have to do anything, but just be in that state of consciousness. I I see that as being at that fourth level. You know, and again, I like to hear your thoughts, but I think that's the point where you're as me, where you are just expressing the manifestation of God, of the, the divinity. You are actually now being the miracle or the magic. Mhm. The through me is you're not doing as much physical. You're not doing as much stuff in the physical. Oh, actually, you know what? This is how I heard, and this is straight. I was listening to a summit, and I heard someone else reference those four stages. And this, what I'm about to share, ties into something we talked about before. We talked about the masculine and the feminine energies.
Hmm.
But I don't know if either one of you are familiar with Dr. Michael Beckwith.
Mm-mm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, he's a metaphysical. His congregation, and I don't know if I can call it a church or whatever, but he basically comes. He speaks from the metaphysical perspective, not from a religious perspective. But he was one of the guest speakers at a summit this week, and he said, you know, uh, that stage two, where you're saying, by me, that's all masculine energy, where you're putting forth something, you're doing something. He said when you get to the third stage, that's feminine energy, where you are now allowing or receiving that which you want to just come to you and through you. And
Hmm.
I thought that was pretty deep, because you think about feminine energy and you think about giving birth. Mhm. It's coming through, you know, the birthing is coming through, you know, the woman. So he said basically, yeah, you get to say, well, you're just allowing. It's a much more relaxed state of being, but you reach it where you can just say, yeah, I'm able to bring my desires, to allow the universe to bring them to me and then through me. Which then that
Yeah.
fourth one is I am. I gotta check again that I am the miracle. Mhm. All right, who's going to say something?
Oh no, I was agreeing, but even Neville says, he said, it is impossible to do anything. You must be in order to do.
Hmm. Which makes me, think of, have either you heard any speaker or anybody reference, you know, um, was it, yeah, to do, to have, to be, like people refer to, those three things, and we tend to do them backwards, you know, which is, yeah, I'm going to do something so I can have something, and then at that point I can be something. And he said that's backwards. That no, you want to be, and that's a state of consciousness. And when you can be, you can then have the things which will allow you to do the things. Is that what your thoughts on Neville's words?
Mhm.
Mm.
Like it's almost it's it's you know how like before it's like okay, get a good education, get a good job, and then you'll have this. You know what I mean? Or you'll be this. Or if I could just have my hands on this, then I'll be happy. And it's like no, be happy first, and then the things will come. That's what it. That's what it reminds me of. That's what
Hmm.
it puts me in the mind of. Like we go into this mindset of having to do all these things and then will be, and it's just like no, be first, and
Yep.
then whatever you desire will come to you. Hmm.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
from
Go
a
ahead, Ray.
perspective, from my perspective, as an artist, how this applies, like, I can see it as, you want to be the artist, right? And then
Hmm.
from being
Mhm.
the artist is what allows you to flex your creativity and do what artists do, create art, create whatever it is, you know, you want to get out of your mind and your imagination. And then, you know, then comes that you will then like you would get something from it, or you will receive something after the process of being and doing. um yeah, so like, if as an artist, in order, and I think, Darren, you might be able to relate, like, in order for us to create, we have to have the confidence to create. We kind of are our worst sort of, we judge ourselves. Artists tend to judge themselves and make themselves feel like they're not good enough to an extent. But then when we do get that confidence and we do feel like we are what it is we want to be, we then have the energy to do, right, and create. And
Hmm.
so, and it fluctuates, right? Like, ultimately, as an artist, the goal is to always be in that state of doing and creating, right? And
Yes.
then, even to the point where it's not even hard to create anything. It just comes out of us, right? And that's when you hit your sort of you're reaching that point of artistry where it just happens. And I think, similar to when you say you're in that flow state, right?
Yes.
Mhm.
And you're always in and out of it. So, like, that's how I see that statement applying to me personally. And I would imagine it applies to different artists, that we must be in order to do.
Well, and just for the record, uh, Terry is a writer. So
Oh,
uh,
got it. Nice.
mhm,
I didn't know that. That's cool.
yeah. So and I know like when I started writing, and this kind of again brings in the previous things we were just talking about tonight. When I first
Hmm.
started writing, and probably even after I published my first book, and this again goes over a long period. People say, "Oh, so you're a writer?" And I would go, "No, no, I'm not a writer." Yeah,
Mhm.
and you really have to catch yourself. Someone says, "You write, don't you?" Yeah, well, then you're a writer. Uh, and I think that also goes again with that state of consciousness, which gets gets I think gets distorted out of maybe doubt, maybe
Hmm.
not hold on to it. See, and again, Ray, I don't know, like you, to my understanding, you've always been an artist. You have that. You have again a gift that you probably started expressing when you were younger.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yes.
and at any point, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm thinking, you probably got some reinforcement as you were going through school, or where you can draw really well, you know, where you're an artist. Like people probably started classifying you as an artist at a very early age. Uh,
Hmm.
so you begin to define yourself as an artist. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and again, Terry, I don't know about you, but I kind of came into my writing at a later age, and I'd already had an identity of who I was, and it didn't include being a writer. Mhm.
Mhm.
So when people would say, you're a writer, and you're like, no, I'm not really a writer, because again, I'm thinking, writers have books, writers write for
Mhm.
newspapers,
Mm-hmm.
like writers are well known. Like again, you have this whole, and I think this is where artists also make this mistake is defining themselves by their commercial success, which
Mhm.
doesn't define whether you're a writer or an artist. And having that, I think, that state of consciousness of being, meaning, I am a writer, I am an artist,
Mm-hmm.
then I can do what I do as a writer or an artist, and then I can have what I want. Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
You're right.
Because, yeah, which goes to what Neville does in the book about that when you define yourself as what you are striving to become, as I am a writer, not I will be a writer, I am an
Mm-hmm.
artist, it changes how your external world because you see it differently.
Mm-hmm.
You start acting
Mhm.
like a writer or artist. I say you basically assume that state of being.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Um,
interesting because I'm looking at a line where he says, "I will be," is a confession that I am not. The
yes,
Father will is always I am. Until you realize that you are the Father, there's only one I am, and your infinite self is that I am. Your will is always I will be.
wow. Again, another deep statement. To say I will, yeah, to say I will means that you are not,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
which is not true because you're part of the infinite. Yeah. Say, can if you have to say that in front of you, Terry, say that again.
I will be is a confession that I am not. The
Mm.
Father's will is always I am. Until you realize that you are the Father, and then it has in parentheses, there is only one I am, and your infinite self is that I am. Your will is always I will be. Oh, oh,
Oh,
okay. It clicked.
all right.
Like I understood it, but reading it that second time, it clicked.
All right.
So
Now,
that
what click? Share it.
it's like I understood, okay, I am part of the whole consciousness. I understand that. But because he's saying, because I am the Father, me saying I will be, my will always be, I will be. My
Mm.
situation will always be, it will be. It will never be, I am. Because I'm consistently saying I will be, this will happen, I am going to. But
So you're always pushing it out away from you.
exactly. Woo.
Mm-hmm.
I think someone just had an epiphany. Mhm.
Because I remember reading him mentioning like thy father's will be done.
Mhm.
I remember him referring to that and then get to this line and it says your will is always I will be, and I was just like, oh wow.
Yeah. What, what did you guys think about? And this, I think the third chapter where he talks about the power of assumption, because I don't know if this is particularly Neville Goddard's, philosophy. If this is, power of assumption, if this is actually his, because we know we hear about, law of attraction. Uh, he kind of takes it to, I think, uh, another level. And it's not just thinking, having the thoughts and the visualization. He's basically immersing yourself into the assumption that it's already true, which is more aligned with, I think, also scripture. Uh,
Mhm.
uh, and just for the record, for anybody watching this, I don't want to speak for Ray or Terry, but I am not a biblical scholar. I'm not a Christian. Mhm. I think the Bible has a lot of truth, a lot of wisdom to offer, but I am not either of those. So, I just want that disclaimer. Uh, Ray and Terry, you can disclaim if you like, or not. Mm. Uh, but in again, chapter 3, the power of assumption. In there, he also talks about. Uh, he does two things. One, he equates our state of consciousness uh, to our reality, and he also again connects it to scripture. Yeah, I always said again, to be transformed, the whole basis of your thoughts must change. You must begin thinking. You must have a state of consciousness of that which you desire. And I think I'm looking at it. Yeah, so I think it's in a like manner, a change of circumstance happens as a result of a change in your state of consciousness. Mhm. So if you have a poor man's mentality, you will always be poor. And then,
Mhm.
he follows up, yeah, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, which is scripture. Mhm. And this, I thought, was also, I just want to throw this in there, and I'd like to get your guys' response. But he also says in there, the first step in renewing your mind, in the renewing of the mind, is desire. And I like that because, again, the origin of the word desire actually means of the Father or from the stars. It's actually two words, day and sire, which means father. Uh, day, I think, is of, so it's of the Father and or from the stars. And there are teachers that said if you have the desire, two things I think is important here. One, what you're seeking is seeking you, so the fact that you have the desire already, I think this would automatically, if we could, once you have that desire for something, if you were in stage level 3, that desire would come through you. And we tend to block it because we're maybe busy either on level 1, struggling, stressing, 2, busy trying to make it happen, as opposed to
Mhm.
being on level 3, where it's through me and trusting that I was given this desire. And I know I've been guilty of this. It's like I got to be doing something, and I know there's something I'm forgetting. You know, why isn't this not working? And you get stuck in that by me, by me. But if you could just relax, let go, and think about the renewal of my mind begins with a desire. And that's a desire to be something else. And if I just trust that my desires came from the universe, from God, from the source, and let me just allow it to happen. What are your thoughts? And do you feel
You know,
comfortable letting go of the wheel?
Do I feel comfortable? No.
Yeah.
But do I understand that I will have to let go?
Mhm.
Yes. Like me feeling comfortable about it is no. But am I willing to? Yes. I'ma still be like, what if it rears to the left or So
Mhm.
am I comfortable? No. But am I willing to let go? Yes. And that's where I'm at right now.
Okay.
I'm willing to let go. Not quite comfortable yet.
Now, let's go a little deeper. What makes you feel uncomfortable about letting go?
um,
And what does it actually mean to you? Yeah. What does it mean letting go?
uh, just the uncertainty. Really,
Mm,
that's it. Like the uncertainty. If I truly let go, well, it's all fall apart.
mm,
That that's the honest. That's how I'm feeling. Like, and I know that holding on is probably causing more damage at this point. No, not causing more damage, but it has not been working lately.
okay. Mm,
Like I know that's why I'm willing to let go, even though it's uncomfortable. I'm willing to let go because holding on is no longer working.
mm. I think it's good that you have the awareness that it's not working. It sounds like you're just caught in between those two stages.
Yeah.
Like this is not working, but I don't want to let it go. Mhm.
I'm willing to let it go. I'm gonna be a little cautious. I'll probably keep tapping, but you know, or hold my breath or something. But that's what it is. Just like that, it will completely fall apart
Mm,
if I let go. Like that, I want to say that would be the fear for me. Like I'm willing to let go. I'm just uncomfortable.
okay. Ray, how about you?
Yeah. Um, yeah, I've always had that sort of behind the wheel mentality, especially when I was younger, and it tended to, work out, because I guess I had a lot of momentum when I was younger
Hmm.
behind it. So it's just like a very bullish, headstrong, tenacious sort of mentality. But definitely as I got older, got married, had a family, got smacked around a little bit by, that reality, humbled a lot. I had to learn how to sort of let go of certain things and just let things roll, right? And yeah, so I've gotten more comfortable with letting go of certain control and just letting things run. Um, I've learned more of what I can control versus things that we have no control over, and have learned to sort of deal and learn to let go of those things. Like, there's certain things we just can't control, right?
Correct.
So the stresses behind that, I've learned to just mitigate to a point where it no longer even it phases me, which is it allows me to focus more on the things I do have control over. Um, so, that process has worked for me. So, um, yeah, so I mean, I let go. I've let go of a few things. Um, and I would say it has definitely made life a bit a lot less stressful, let's just say.
Hmm.
Um, because especially with with two little ones, I'm just trying to mitigate as much stress as possible because it just needs to be reserved for other things, right?
That's
So
true. Hmm.
yeah,
Mm.
so that's where I'm
Yeah.
at.
Okay. Yeah. I think part of it is just due to how we've all been raised. You
Hmm.
know, we've been indoctrinated that you must do all these things to get all of these things. It's
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
change. And if you don't do it, your life will fall apart. Um, I think we may have had conversations, early on about, I think this was a group conversation, or I may have had it in one-on-ones. Uh, but, why is it that we'll say undeserving people, quote unquote, are lucky? You know, because we grew up, I think, with this belief that if I do all the proper things, then I'll be rewarded.
Mhm.
And I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. But if we're stuck in that mindset, you're like, well, damn, I know people who don't do squat, and yet they seem to have good things happen to them. And I wonder if it's, again, their state of being like, yeah,
Mhm.
I deserve this. It's mine, and maybe, you know, yeah, I don't have to do all that work. And I'm not sure if they are even aware of their behavior on a conscious, like consciously aware of it, or they're just exuding that energy. You know? But I think because we've been conditioned that you're supposed to do these things to maintain a sense of security, that I think is what screws us up.
Mhm.
Mhm. That why we're afraid to let go, because it's like, okay, if I let go, everything's going to fall apart. But here's the thing, you're not really letting go of the doing per se. You know, you're letting go, you're detaching from the results, which is where I think our stress comes from. Now, oh, is this going to work out? But what am I going to do if it doesn't work out? You know, oh my goodness,
Mhm.
Where if you say, I'm going to go ahead and do what I can do, this kind of goes to the point you raised, where, what things can I control?
Mhm.
Let me do those. And I'm not going to be concerned about if things don't work out the way I want. I'll
Mhm.
just repeat the process. I'll do what I can.
Mhm.
You know, and I again, I don't know if this was in this particular thing of Neville Goddard, but also when you begin to understand, I think, and grab hold of the universal laws, I think that helps too because now you're releasing, and I think you're tapping into the power of the universe, and you're going with that flow. I don't know if that makes sense. You're letting, I put it this way: if you stepped off of a cliff, the law of gravity is going to take care of you. It's going to take
Mhm.
you all the way down. Uh,
Mhm.
that's just the way it is. And I think if we understood the other laws and learned how to utilize them, or even say master them, I dare to say that, but I think things will always work out. But
Mhm.
this goes, matter of fact, I'm speaking to two people who want to escape this dimension.
Mhm.
All right. Well, I think being able to do that is that you start operating on a different level. You kind of start operating, on the invisible level. And I, heard something recently, and I thought about it. Well, maybe I was one of the mistakes I was making for a long time. I was going through a challenging period. Is not recognizing that my challenges, I'm trying to solve them on we'll say in the physical realm, and said no, they probably weren't happening on a physical realm. The physical realm is just the manifestation of something happening on a different level. And that was actually one of the things that led me to really get deeper into the uh, the metaphysics and the spiritual realm, said, well, let me see, what am I doing wrong? Because I'm doing everything right on a quote physical level, and it's not working
Hmm.
out.
Hmm.
So I'm like, okay, something else, you know, uh, has to give. So I think letting go is not just necessarily doing nothing; it's detaching from the physical results. And I think the second thing is learning how to utilize the universal laws so that you can get the desired, uh, yeah, you're still moving forward. And maybe you can get the desired results that you want. So,
I
does
mean,
that make
towards
sense?
the end of the book, I mean, he touches upon even just the concept of being able to sort of bring to you what it is you want just by
Mm-hmm.
adjusting your mindset and then reinforcing it with, how your conviction essentially, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And those laws that, make up how these things, how manifestation works, he's breaking it down, with those stories he tells at the end. He's breaking it down to the idea of, creating and imagining a scenario in your mind that you want and convincing yourself that it is, and
Yeah.
go through the consistent process and staying consistent and sort of continuously reaffirm that it is until it becomes your physical reality, right? So
Yes.
um, yeah, that concept of the power of imagination, you know, that really sparked my interest because, like, we've spoken about this and many times in our past conversations, and even, attributed it to maybe just the laws of quantum physics and the way our brains function and the frequencies that we emit and how it interacts with reality and how it's able to sort of dive into different alternate, dimensions even. But like when he broke down in the end of the book just a method that we can try, I instantly said, I got to figure out what I'm going to figure out. Like, I got to figure out what it is I want to test this with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is now, it's empowering, right?
Yes.
It's empowering because now I feel like I have, our capabilities give us the ultimate control of our reality. That's what I'm
Mm-hmm.
taking away from the end of the book. And he even says it towards, absolutely the last statements being that, it doesn't work every time, but realize that the reason it's not working is highly likely due to how convinced you are and how your conviction as to what it is you're trying to make happen,
Mm-hmm.
right? um so yeah, so it's just like, our ability to sort of create the reality starts from our imagination.
Yes. Which I look at when we talk about letting go.
Hmm.
That's when I say you let go of trying to do things on a in the physical realm,
Hmm.
and you begin to grab hold of the things in the universal, in the spiritual realm. You're still you're still working, all right. You're still putting forth effort,
Hmm.
but now you're leveraging. Like instead of using a shovel, you got a huge dump truck with one of them shovels on, like one of them big, huge, construction type shovels.
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
you're now trusting. You know, you're offloading the heavy lifting to the universe. Mhm.
Hmm.
And I think the fact that he said how important your imagination is.
Mm-hmm.
And you think about it, uh, we say everything that's been created that we see that's been created by man was created twice. First, it was created in somebody's head
Mm-hmm.
as an idea, and then somebody, took that idea and, transformed it into reality.
Mm-hmm.
So why can't we do that for everything? And it truly is the art of, I think, of manifestation. And
Mm-hmm.
again, you know, can you convince yourself? And this is where I think we, yeah, where we lose it is that we begin doubting. And I
Mm-hmm.
think also in scripture it says, the faith of a mustard seed, which means you don't have to have 100% faith, but you got to believe it on some level.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And I think for a lot of people, let's be honest. You grow up, and at a certain point, people tell you, you know what? Stop using your imagination.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's suppressed. Now, whether you know it's purposely done or if people again being indoctrinated that they do from generation to generation, they squelch your imagination because they want you to be secure. It's about security, fear of security. You know,
Mm-hmm.
imagination they can't. It's not real to them,
Mm-hmm.
but it is the precursor to everything that is real.
Right.
So yeah,
No.
why can't we manipulate? Why can't we leverage that to work for us? Mhm. Um, so Ray, you're trying to figure out how how to
I
use
mean,
it?
yeah, well, I mean, understanding how he described it and how he kind of broke it down into different stories he had told. And I think the coolest one was, the one with the little boy who wanted a dog.
Hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of, it was interesting how the kid picked it up even passively listening, in the background. He's like, "Oh, is that really how it works? Because I can do that." And it kind of reaffirmed what we were talking about earlier in the conversation, that children have no fear, right? And
Hmm.
they are some of the most authentic humans on this planet. And
Yes.
and so, they're going to take this concept and they're going to run with it, full steam ahead. And the kid ended up with his dog. But think about, like, even the idea that the kid entered a competition and he wrote, an essay on why he wanted this dog and why he deserved the dog, and he ended up winning the dog of, it just so happened to be the dog that he's been sort of, working towards, that his favorite type of dog. It's just, it shows that it's not just the process of imagining it, but acting on it as well.
Yes.
And I kind of like that, because some people, and I see this when I speak to people about these concepts, they still think of it within, what we call the woo woo, right?
Hmm.
And it's magic. It's just, it's non-existent, right? So it's very easily for them to brush off these concepts, right? Because in their mind they're thinking it just appears, not understanding that, a big portion of making these concepts work is you actively working on them, correct? And you
Hmm.
actively enabling them, and allowing yourself to move in these directions that, you know the universe pushes you when you're focusing and tuning in to the reality you want to be in, correct?
Yes.
Because people, movies, for instance, science fiction has convinced us that, for instance, time travel is blinking into another time, right?
Hmm.
Versus, or magic is just making things appear out of thin air. Um, But the more we dive into these concepts from like Neville Goddard and other people that we've discussed, it requires us to be active, you know, mentally in our
Hmm.
consciousness, in our thought process, but also in reality pursuing the things that we're looking to accomplish. So combining those two hand in hand, creates the outcome we're looking for.
Yes.
Um, a lot of people just don't think of it that way. A lot of people, just figure, hey, I just gotta do what I gotta do, what everyone tells me to do. The
Hmm.
concepts that what you had mentioned, Darren. Everyone thinks it just, wake up, go to work, and I just do all the right things that everyone tells me to do, and I should be just fine, right?
Yep.
And so that, and that sort of environment that we're all brought up in, the 9 to 5, the rat race
Hmm.
type of environment. The second anyone tells you to deviate from that, instantly the first thing that comes is fear of, oh, I'm gonna jump off of the rails and crash, right? So yeah, so it's just their innate, their instant reaction is always something negative, right? But
Yes.
you go to a child with this concept, and they're like, when can I start, right?
Yes.
And so 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 that's what we're dealing with, right?
Hmm. Yeah. And I think again you touched on something which is moving into this level doesn't mean that there's not any work. 'Cause, that's the thing that people always harp on. That by letting go, you know, and taking in some of these other concepts, that you're going to sit around and do nothing.
Hmm.
And that's not really true. It's just a different level of, I'm going to say action. I won't even use the word work. It's a different level of action, again, that you focus more on the invisible, on your state of being, on your state of consciousness, which is active work, at monitoring your thoughts, uh, emotions, because otherwise, like I said, the level below that is, yeah, you're doing all the hard work,
Hmm.
as opposed to let me work with the universe. I still got to do work because even with, say, for instance, the reading, the practice of, you know, again, now that you have like awareness and you're starting to monitoring your thoughts and you're trying to monitor your behavior, that's
Hmm.
actually work. You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
uh, and again, it's just a different. You're moving. I said we're moving into a different space where our work is not about carrying physical things or doing physical work. It's now more mental, and I think I dare say even more spiritual. Um, and I just want to equate it with this is in when I was training in kung fu, uh, my sensei he shared something, and I saw how applicable it was in other areas of our life. But he said, the first area of combat is you're just going at it, and usually the person, the bigger person, will usually win. It's the law of tonnage. They talk about it. Two vehicles collide, the bigger one will usually do the most damage.
Hmm.
Uh, he said, but then the second level is where martial arts, and he said, particularly kung fu, comes in, is that your combat now where you are using the other person's weight to your advantage. You're not trying to go, pound for pound with somebody, which is like a slugfest, and the one with the most power will usually, like I said, win. You're now leveraging a different set of laws. But he said the third level is like Tai Chi. Tai Chi is when your opponent comes, you're not even there. Mhm. You're not even, having a physical interaction with them at all. you're moving in a different plane with a different energy.
Mhm.
And I think that's kind of what this is all about. You're moving with a different grace and a different energy. Mhm. Yeah, and you'll pop into the physical world and you got to do physical work, but you're now letting the universe, letting the divinity do the heavy lifting for you. Mhm. And I think part of that is being able to trust, that faith and trust that's always going to work out. Oh, any, I thought you were going to say something, Terry. Uh,
No.
hmm, any thoughts? We already had an hour and a half.
Yeah, I think I'm good. I think I really enjoyed the book, especially how he ended it. Um,
Yeah, me too.
and I'm looking to see. I've been looking into different clips of different books of his, and finding some good ones that I want to keep on. I'm starting to circulate them around my
Okay,
friends and
yeah.
family. Start
He's all
getting
over.
conversations. Hmm.
Sorry, go ahead, Ray.
No, I was just saying I'm trying to get different conversations going around the subject matter and around his work.
Mm, yeah, a lot of his stuff is on YouTube. There is a, uh, I was going to say young man, but young to me, who does really good analysis of Neville Goddard's work. And believe it or not, Ray, his name is Joseph Rodriguez, I believe. Uh, you know, when I first saw his name, I was like, that's not the Joe I know. Uh, but he does these mind maps. He breaks it down. Neville Goddard's work. So if you come across any of his videos or you search them out, it's good. But there's plenty of Neville Goddard's work, and in the book, I think on the first couple of pages there's a link to other free books of Neville Goddard. Um, and the last point is the copy of the book that I sent you is secured. I didn't realize that until I went to try to highlight some text. That's because it's been protected, but you can unprotect it. Uh, you can just Google. You can Google like PDF secured uh, or unsecured, and you'll come across a bunch of websites where they will remove the yeah, basically the password protect off of the document.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which then will allow you to highlight. Yeah, the one I
Yeah,
use, just so you know, uh, yeah, which I've used on more than one occasion, is called, ilovepdf.com. So,
got it.
all right. But again, look at the beginning of the book and you should see a link if you want more of his books.
Okay.
Uh-huh. All right. Any closing remarks?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, this was a good conversation.
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm. Uh, we can talk, offline about, the next session. All right.
Very, very good.
All right. Thank you for joining. Yep. Listen to Bind and Bound, the book studio, yep, club, where we just, learn and have discussions about different topics. Mhm. I want to say good evening to Terry and Ray and talk to you guys soon.
Take care, Darren.
All right.
Take
All right. Good night.
Good.
care.